Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be starting our Spain beginner playthrough tutorial where we are going to be focusing on a certain aspect of the game, explaining it while doing episodes of a playthrough where we show every single one of our actions and explain our way through it as we go. This is going to be geared towards the beginner, so if you're here for an advanced sweaty tutorial that features the types of spreadsheets you have to hide from your children, that is not going to be what we are going to be seeing today. Now, just very briefly, the reason why we are picking Spain is because I think Spain is unambiguously the best country to learn on because they are relatively powerful and big. This is important because if you pick someone that is relatively small in Victoria 3 and you don't understand how the systems work, it's going to feel a little bit like a lot of waiting around because understanding of kind of the deeper systems, which often have effects that you do not feel immediately, but instead effects you feel down the line, you won't really be getting the feedback as well, and so playing a country that can throw its weight around will generally make the game feel better. But secondarily, if you're coming from something like another Paradox title like EU4 or Crusader Kings 3, in those you can play a country like Oman, or you can go out and play Sokoto and it's not too bad. In Victoria 3, playing an unrecognized country outside of Europe or the Americas is going to feel very, very rough if you do it through your as your first playthrough. I do not recommend it. So we're going to play on Spain. Now, I think it would be mildly patronizing to kind of talk through all the lenses and like explain all this type of thing in a sort of linear way where it's like, this is where we have all this stuff. But there is one piece of the UI where I think if you don't know it, that is catastrophically bad for you. And that in particular is the tooltip lock settings here. If we go into the tooltip settings, you will see that there is a lock delay mechanism. Anytime you hover over a concept, there will be a little progress bar and then the tooltip will lock and you will be able to move your mouse around and in particular look in tooltips within tooltips. If the lock delay is really long, and you can see here, you can see the progress bar, it is progressing, but it is progressing quite slowly, it will be very difficult to navigate through menus and such when you are trying to get information. The initialized settings for this lock, I think, are over a second. It's really, really rough. I recommend having it much shorter, whatever you feel comfortable with. But if we see here, if we are trying to go through a tooltip, we're trying to see why they're struggling, what this means, and then we're trying to see, okay, they have really expensive goods. We want to look at pop needs. This is the classic, triple nested tooltip that was important on game release. You can see here how if we had to wait 5 seconds each time in order to access this information, especially if we were checking back in on grain prices over and over and over again, this might get to be a bit of a problem, so I would recommend that. We are going to try and keep on pause, though, as we play through and just move as we go. We are trying to be as instructive as possible, not necessarily playing perfectly, which would involve a lot of pausing, so off we will go, and we will start with talking about the construction sector. Almost all the things that are present in Victoria 3, all the value, all the power is created through buildings and buildings as they get employed by pops. They're the heart of the game, and much like your heart, you can't see it visually, at least for us in this episode. We're not going to focus on the pops, but the buildings themselves, this is where the power is at. And so what you can do is your construction will build the buildings, and you can think of your construction sectors as your GDP growth rate, or your building, your construction here. In this case, we have 18. This is our GDP growth rate. As we add construction, some of it will get allocated to the government construction queue and some of it to the private. The private construction queue is okay. It will generally build stuff somewhat efficiently, and especially if you are accidentally ignoring something, what it will do is it will pick up the slack and generally build profitable buildings if you fail to. The private construction queue, that gets funded by the investment pool, which is an idea that we will come back to, whereas the government funds the government construction, and you can see the private queue is picking up a cotton plantation. If we look at the UI, we can see that both are getting produced here. Now, what we are doing is we are looking to build buildings, and we want to always be constructing. And so let's take a closer look at buildings and explain how they produce value. Buildings will produce goods, and these goods, the value that they produce, is going to be equal to the number of things, in this case 187 pieces of furniture, multiplied by the price of the good. This is very, very important because this is a bit distinct from some games, although not all games. Buildings can go from being wildly profitable to actually being negative in value if the prices are a sufficient way. The reason why is the value that the building produces is not equal to just this output good, but instead is this output good minus the input goods. If you could see here, and this is going to be the number, in this case 124 of wood, multiplied by the price, which is quite expensive for wood. And so if these get really high and these get really low, then the building will be unprofitable, and what will happen is the cash reserves will decrease. Sometimes they will decrease anyways so that dividends can be paid out, but they will decrease all the way, and then the building will fire off pops. At which point, if it's not employing any population, like here it's employing 2,000 shopkeepers and 18,000 laborers, if it's not employing anyone, then it is effectively useless. And so you don't want to have that happening, and so price is going to be something that is quite important. We'll talk about price, how it's calculated in just a moment, but before we do that, the value is this minus these two, and the value gets produced in one of two ways. First of all, the wages, which help to stimulate your economy and are paid out to workers, and you can tax these workers, are going to be paid out. And once the wages are covered, the remaining will go to the ownership, which gets fed the weekly balance. In this case, we have a local workforce that owns 2 levels of the building here, which those are the workers that are present, and a financial districts too, which are going to be private owners that own some of the levels. If we nationalize a building, we can get the third type of ownership, which is going to be government ownership. Generally speaking, government ownership is not preferred, and so we'll put it back up for privatization here right away. Now you can see we have 3 types of buttons here that we can click and do things. The types of buttons are going to be primary PMs. Some buildings will have multiple ones. That's PMs, which stands for production methods. Generally speaking, with a few exceptions, you want to be on the latest and greatest. So here you can see we have handcrafted furniture. If we upgraded to lathe, this would be the change to all of our input goods. We'd have more input goods, but we'd have a roughly 30% more output goods as well. Generally speaking, now all PMs are profitable if the prices are all at the same percentage level. If they're all at base price, each good has a base price, and then it deviates from price from there. And so we would like to get lathes, and so what we'll do is we'll actually come in here and we will start researching the lathe technology ourselves. Now, coming back into the building we are taking a look at, the secondary PMs, again, will almost always be profitable and good for us to shift up onto, and we have available luxury furniture. These are going to sometimes not be good, but we'll take a look at that in a second. And finally, we have the green ones, which are labor-saving PMs. These are going to be good as you start running out of peasants relative to gainfully employed. As you start running out, these will be good to turn on. Sometimes when you run out of labor in a specific area, they're good to turn on. We are not going to be turning them on for some time here. So what we're going to do is we are going to increase this here, and then suddenly this is going to start losing money. It's going to start losing money because one of our output goods is really, really, really cheap, and our input goods are quite expensive. And so what we will have to do is try to remedy this. First of all, the first thing that's going to happen is our pops will realize they can consume luxury furniture on Monday, and this should start ticking up. If not on Monday, it will tick up relatively soon. Currently, our pops are not consuming it. But coming into the market, to explain prices, the way it works is every single unit that we produce will get put out in terms of a sell order, and every single unit of a good that we consume will get put out in terms of a buy order. Every single good has a base price. In the case of wood, the base price is 20% here, and it has a modified price, in this case plus 40%. What the modified price is going to be is there's going to be a ceiling and a floor. The absolute lowest you can achieve is going to be minus 75%, which is going to be achieved when there's when there's equal to or more than twice as many sell orders and buy orders. You can see we're basically experiencing exactly that here with the dies. Coming over here, you can see that when the number of sell orders is more than or is less than half the number of buy orders, you achieve price ceiling. thing which we are currently experiencing with furniture. That's one of the reasons why our profitability went down, is because when we swapped this, we were actually producing less furniture. You can see minus 25 here, in order to produce luxury furniture. You can see the building has fired down and is reaching a point where it is equilibrium profitable, where, you know, the luxury furniture has rebounded in price a little bit. This furniture is here, and what we want to do is we want to massage this to being more profitable. Now we can do this by constructing here. We want to always be constructing. We'll add one here. But what we want to do is we want to increase the price of our outputs a little bit and decrease the price of our inputs. And so long term, often you will end up wanting to build these things in order to do it yourself, but short term, especially at the beginning of the game, you will often want to resolve this with trade. So we'll put import prioritization, which will make it easier for us to import more goods. And we're going to come into the trade tab, go to import and click fabric, and we are going to import some of this, which is going to drop the price of fabric, making our furniture manufacturing more profitable. We're also going to click the export tab, and we are going to click, actually here, let's go through the UI this way. We're going to take a look at this. We're going to put this on export prioritization, and then we are going to click the export tab, and we're going to export luxury furniture. We see we can't export it very well, but we will export in a couple spots, and then we'll take a look at how the PM is looking here. We still see that we have expensive hardwood. So what we will do is we'll look in the building tab, our buildings tab, and we'll come to the building that produces hardwood, the logging camps, and we'll look at some of the ones we have available. We have Nevera. Nevera actually has a PM that's a little bit less efficient. Hardwood production, in order to produce 10 hardwood, it sacrifices 25 softwood. You can see that this is a little bit less efficient than this focused hardwood PM, and we need more hardwood, so we'll turn that up in Nevera. Now as we come back here, what's going to happen is this building's probably going to start getting profitable any second now, and it's going to start hiring up. To be fair, it's already hiring up. Now it's hiring up a little bit more. The weekly balance is a little bit positive, and so things are starting to develop on their way. So this is going to be getting a little bit better. Whenever and you can see now, this is starting to get a little bit cheap as more get employed. So the production is increasing. This 93 has gone up, which makes this good cheap, which is why it is kind of seesawing back and forth a little bit. But what will happen is our trade routes will start picking up a little bit more of the slack here. If we take a look in the market at our buy orders, we are getting, or not of that, our buy orders here, we are getting some buy orders from pop consumption, and then we are getting some buy orders from trade routes. And so our trade routes will help to keep the price of this a little bit expensive. Now, what we will do here is we will come through and we will do what you usually have to do at the start of the game with everything, is we're going to double check our PMs and make sure that we are using the latest PMs on all these. We, of course, kind of have this memorized, and so we'll click through and we'll look for all the ones that are going to be the latest, and then we will cause a bunch of problems in our market, and then we will resolve those said problems. There's going to be a couple exceptions where we won't want to do it, but often these tooltips can be wrong. The reason why this is not wrong is because tools are actually going to become extremely expensive in the market, but that's something we can solve, and so we'll still want to create more efficiency here. So we will swap all of these over. We're going to start using the shortcut there. We are actually not going to swap all of these over, because the focused hardwood PM and this prioritized softwood production PM, these are equally efficient at base prices, because the base price of hardwood is twice what the base price of softwood is, and so instead we will want to have a mixture of the two, either focused hardwood or focused softwood, and then we will come here. Now we probably have some shortages in the market. We should be getting some sort of tooltips when we do, but in particular you really want to resolve shortages, because this will start to cause an output malice. So it will just decrease the output goods. So not only will the thing be less profitable because there is really, really expensive input goods, but it will also make it so there's less output. And so what we will do is we will look to import and resolve our shortages here in the short term, in the shortage term, you know what I'm saying? And we will do that on everything. We don't necessarily need to put import prioritization, although that will help. We're already importing artillery, but we can import just a little bit more of it, and we will see that the symbols for the shortage have gone away. We also see that the tools are a little bit expensive, so we're going to construct a little bit of tools here in Asturias. Now, we want to always be constructing, and we want to keep this queue going, which kind of raises the larger question, what should we build? Well, we should generally engage in what's called feeding the construction loop. Players will refer to doing the construction loop, and this is building the goods that are used in the construction sectors, and then building more construction. You can see here we're losing money, not the biggest deal, we'll get to it in a second, but if you are playing on someone who is below major power, if you're playing on a great power or a major power, having a negative money is not that bad. If you're playing an unrecognized power or a minor or a smaller power of some sort, this will be really bad. But we see here we also have a PM, and so we'll upgrade onto it. This will cause us immediate problems, and then we'll go about solving them. But we have those two construction sectors we produced in Asturias, and we see that we have a shortage here. We also have lathes, so we'll turn on the PMs in just a second, but we see that we have a shortage here, which is actually going to make it so we produce less and less and less construction. So what we will want to do is we'll put import prioritization on the iron, and we are going to want to import some iron. We can see it's down here, and so we're going to import a lot of these. This will decrease our costs. Currently, if we take a look at this, a lot of our costs are actually on construction goods, roughly a third of our cost, because we have this 60k of the other ones. We get language in the classroom event. We're going to pause for events. We will get a little bit more assimilation and more radicalism, and we will get some Basque pop radicals. We will also be able to get less radicalism over here. Since we're not trying to pass any laws currently, and we're not too worried about upsetting the petite bourgeoisie, I think we're going to do this one, although this one is a fair enough option here. Okay, we finished lathe as well, so we're going to come over here and start researching atmospheric engine, which we get lucky that it's natural spreading on us. This is going to be a very good one, and then we will come back to take a look at the market and what we have done here, where we are going to have very expensive iron. So what we will want to do is we want to deal with that shortage. We're dealing with a trade route, and what the construction loop is what something we'll come back to right now, is we want to feed the goods that our construction sector is building, in particular for kind of several reasons. One, a lot of these are really, really efficient, and we won't go into efficiency and pull out any spreadsheets right now, but namely wood is extraordinarily efficient. It's the most efficient good in the game. Iron is efficient once we get that atmospheric engine pump tech we took a look at, and then tools are pretty efficient. Cloth is not that efficient, but of the agrarian goods, it is going to be one of the more efficient ones. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to make sure we are constructing a little bit of those things. So we are going to build just one iron mine here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use one of these other buttons. Subsidies is not very useful mechanic. We generally don't want the government to own the buildings, so we don't want to nationalize, but we're going to use automatic expansion because ABC, you want to always be constructing, and so doing this will help us to keep the construction queue filled. Is it perfectly optimal? No. But this will allow you to keep things going if you know you are going to want to construct specific things. And so in Asturias, we are now going to be constructing the full gamut of the construction loop minus the fabric. We are constructing the logging camp, an iron mine, a tooling workshop, and we have it on auto expansion. We are going to choose to import the fabric as much as we can. We can't really import it more. Fabric's not really that expensive, and so we won't be too concerned with it ourselves as things stand. We come and look here. The prices have gotten a little bit better. There's no shortage. Now we are turning up 10 construction. One of the reasons why we want to build some of these things is that we will have two things going on in our economy if we are doing this. We will either have a situation, as is right now, where a lot of these goods are expensive and construction's very expensive and we're losing money. When this is the case, at least it will be the case that we have built a lot of these things, and so we have really profitable industries. If we take a look at some of the places that are going to be producing, some of these construction goods, like right here, this building is relatively profitable. Now, to be fair, they have to pay out quite a bit in wages, and they have really expensive inputs in the form of tools, but they will generally be pretty profitable. But you notice, hey, why is that wood price not as profitable as, or not as high as this wood price over here? What's that about? Well, that has to do with something called local goods. What happens is the market price is differentiated from another type of price, which is the local price that actually gets paid in locations. So wood is a little bit cheaper over here, where we have some wood production and not so much wood consumption. And then wood is really expensive over here where we have the construction sector. And the reason for that is prices get calculated twice. They get calculated in the market, as we mentioned, again with a ceiling of plus 75. Here we'll import a little bit in order to solve that. With a ceiling of plus 75, if you have double the amount of buy orders and sell orders or more, and a floor of minus 75 if you have double the amount of sell orders or more. Yes, of the other one. The same calculation gets done locally in a given state, and this is used to inform partially the price that is actually getting paid. So if we find the wood here, we will see that it's plus 8% price in Asturias specifically relative to the Spanish market. If we click on it here, we will see this 75% figure, which is informed by MAPI, or Market Access Price Impact here. What this does is it makes it so 75% of the price is informed by the market price, and the remaining 25% is informed by the price here in Asturias. Since we are creating so many buy orders, let's take a look at what those are from. In the construction sectors which we built, wood is pretty expensive here. If you noticed, a lot of the buildings, or all the buildings we built for the construction loop, the two construction sectors we started off with, and the iron mine and the tooling workshop and now the logging camp, we built them all in Asturias. That is because wherever you are building stuff to be consumed, you also want to build it to supply that consumption as a result of this MAPI, or market access price impact mechanic, so that it will benefit in two ways. Now we're going to try not to explain this too much, but what this will happen is both when we are buying and selling, this will happen at a better price. If we think about these tools, when these tools are getting consumed by what will end up happening with the price of tools is the price of tools is closer to the market price as a result of us actually having some production here of the tools. This place is employing up because it's profitable, but its input goods are still really expensive. The tools, because there is buy orders here from the construction sector, the tools price is not absolutely collapsing because we are supplying them. If we only had sell orders here locally in Asturias, the tools price would get cheap and the building would be less profitable. This makes it so that our building gets to be more profitable because we have buy orders from the construction sector. Similarly, in the construction sector, because we have sell orders of tools, the tools have actually gotten cheaper here. You can see the price is going down pretty linearly as we expand. And so generally speaking, what you want to do as you open up the game is you want to come in here and you want to build iron, take a look at how much iron you have, because iron is overwhelmingly, if we take a look at Asturias, overwhelmingly the expensive thing in the iron frame buildings. You can see it's roughly half of the input good cost, and you want to build locally around the iron so that you can benefit from the market access price impact. And so that's what we want to do. We see that we also have a lot of iron available in Navarra. That's not, I believe, where we have a construction sector, but we have some in Castile as well. So what we will do here in Castile, we have two construction sectors already. We will put this iron mine on auto expand. Again, this picks and shovels is actually not very efficient overall, and so you usually want to wait for atmospheric engine and get your iron through imports before then, but we're just going to put it on auto expand now, and we're going to put this on auto expand as well, and that way these will locally supply the construction sector, and so the construction sector will pay less, and also the tooling workshops will get paid more because the construction sector will push up the price, allowing the tools to be more profitable, while the tooling workshop simultaneously pushes down the price, which allows the construction sector to pay less. It will be a closer equilibrium rather than swinging really far in either direction, so both get to benefit. So this is, generally speaking, what you want to build, and you want to keep doing the goods that are going to be built in the construction sectors until it gets to the case where these goods are really not expensive anymore. And then what will happen is then you will generally have a little bit of a positive balance, perhaps, not right now. And then what you do is you add more construction. So we're not at that point, but if we were, we would just add more construction sectors. Eventually you will get to a point, though, where the overall market price of, the iron is not that expensive, and simultaneously the overall, you can't afford any more construction. You don't actually want to absolutely collapse the iron price by just building more and more and more and more into infinity, because what this means is you now have an economy consisting entirely of iron mines, and if the iron is extremely cheap, it will not be profitable. Usually when you hit this point, you want to start expanding into other goods. Now, this is a little bit of a shortcut in terms of how to play, but what you can do, and this will often lead to not the most profitable thing happening, what you can do is you can, in particular, build whatever is most expensive. Now, this will fail because some PMs are more efficient than others, and so there's actually, you kind of want some prices to be higher than others, but if you don't know the efficiency of PMs, just building the most expensive thing is going to be relatively good. Now, I think that we got some new PMs, I'm not sure we swapped onto them, in the form of dye workshops here. You saw that we had extremely expensive, the basic clothing. That will solve that issue. We will do this with the furniture, and we will do this with this. We had gotten that from the lathes technology, which we had researched before, and now that we put that in, this will make clothing cheaper, considerably cheaper once we get to the next Monday. In fact, let's speed things up a little bit, but we see that if this is going to stay expensive, we might even want to import it, because our pops consume this stuff. Wow, the absolute god situation. We see that we have natural spread, kind of one of the other most important technologies, stock exchanges. This is really important because it gives us 10% MAPI, or market access price impact. So now the market price, instead of only informing 75% of the local price for all of these buildings, if we take a look at local prices and we take a look here, it's now informing 85%. So we got really, really lucky on the natural spreads. We'll also look to import this in order to solve our shortage problem, although we will want to build that ourselves. And also, we are getting close. Didn't we research Atmo? Okay, we're going to research atmospheric engine because we want to focus on the construction loop, and this has a much better PM for iron specifically, so this is going to allow us to focus on it. But again, if you are getting to a point where even though the goods are cheap, iron's like, if iron were like let's plus 10%, or sorry, minus 10% price, we don't want to spam iron infinitely, because if we have an economy that is 80% iron and then we collapse the price of that economy, then our GDP will actually shoot down, and this will be bad. And so, in general, this is something that is also a little bit divergent with Victoria 3 relative to other games. Very often, if there are prices in other games, you want to get those prices as cheaply as possible. You can see here, we do have a little bit of cheap price. But in Victoria 3, if you get all your prices cheap, all your buildings won't be profitable. They will be less and less profitable. In theory, you actually want all your buildings to be, or all your goods to be more expensive in the aggregate. You just don't want some to be way more expensive than others. And so what we can do is we can export to increase prices, and this will stimulate the economy. Because production methods, if they are producing net, let's take a look at a building here in just a sec. If they are producing as a result of their input goods minus their output goods at base prices, so if all these price lines are not at minus 10%, but are instead at 0%, if they're producing 1,000 of value, and then you increase all the prices in the entire market to plus 50%, then each of these buildings will be producing a 1,500 worth of value. And we won't get too sweaty into the math, but it's not the case that you want to reduce prices, because if we decreased all the prices by 50%, and this minus this used to be 1,000 at base prices, but at minus 50% prices, it then became 500, this would mean your economy would shrink. Instead, it's the case that you want to not be building something because it's expensive to get it cheap, but you are building it because this is an opportunity for a really profitable building. So we could come into the tab here, take a look at lead, and we can see that we can build it in Aragon, and this will resolve our lead issue, which we are going to be coming up. Now here, with atmospheric engine, there's going to be a need now for coal in order to help us industrialize here, because this is going to get used. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the 2 states that we are auto-expanding in. We're going to come back and we're going to add some coal mines here as well. And we're going to put these on auto-expand because we want to have our coal produced in the same state where we're producing our iron, because when we switch to atmospheric engine pump, this is going to be affected by MAPI. The play for power, the landowners, we don't like those guys. We won't focus on it too much, but we don't want to give them political strength, so we'll choose that option there. And so we will put this on auto expand here as well, and then we will be getting atmospheric engine pump in just a moment, and we can upgrade the PMs. When we upgrade the PMs, it's probably going to be the case. Here, you can hold Alt in order to kick something to the top of the queue. We do want to fill at least one coal mine, and now we are going to be able to swap over our production methods, or PMs here, on the coal mines. We have a couple of those, and the iron mines, and now iron is going to get really profitable. Also, gold is extremely good. As we swap all these over, you can see our budget immediately improves because things are a lot better. As far as tech goes, we will just grab mechanical tools because this is feeding in the construction loop with tools being produced here. And so this is generally what you want to do, at least at the very outset, is focus on the construction. We're not at the point where the construction goods are cheap, so we're just going to keep building construction goods for quite a while. Effectively, coal has been added to this loop in the sense that we need coal to build the iron. So even though there isn't coal present here, we still need the coal in order to produce the iron as much as possible. So we can think of there being a pseudo input for coal. When we finish researching mechanical tools, we will get steel tools for the tooling workshops, at which point steel will effectively become part of the loop, because tools are part of the loop. Tools, very importantly, also feed into the iron mines as an input, and so everything is very much self-contained. The iron feeds into the tools, at least for now. If we had a tooling workshop finished, we could see that. The iron feeds into the tools. Soon, the iron and the coal will feed into the steels. So when you are industrializing in particular, you want to look for states that have a lot of iron and at least a little bit of coal. These are very abundant in Spain, which will help things out. And so this is what we are going to be going for, at least initially. Now, we are having a little bit of budgetary problems, but there's a ton of tools that we can use for that. But we will be talking about those more next episode. For this episode, what we are going to leave off with is going to be the fact that we are just going to briefly, broad strokes, talk about all of these. Actually, I think we forgot to import dyes to solve a little problem. No, we already had some dyes in the market. Fair enough. But I think we're going to import silk. Put this on import prioritization and import some of this, because this is going to be an agrarian good, which kind of transitions us into what we want to talk about. We're going to do the same thing with grain here. We're not going to use corn laws for those of you who are a little bit more advanced. Instead, we're just going to keep on playing normally. But as far as goods go, generally speaking, for reasons that are both related to politics and the buildings themselves, you don't want to be building as much from the agriculture tab. There are going to be reasons. Exceptions are going to include opium, which we cannot build any of because we do not have the proper arable slots. Different buildings will have different arable slots. We don't have any that can build opium. Cotton, to some degree, will be one that you maybe want to produce sometime. Sometimes if you're trying to bring up SOL, grain will be useful, but for the most part, you don't want to focus on the agriculture. Something that is worth noting here, though, is this 200 cost. Buildings have variable costs. All the agricultural buildings are really, really cheap. The problem is when you build them, you fire a bunch of peasants out from here, and so sometimes this can cause unemployment. That's maybe not enough to worry about right now. But in particular, the things you want to focus on is much more is going to be resources. Namely, the logging camps are the absolute king of buildings. They are the most efficient building per construction. A big part of that is they only have the 200 construction costs, but also they're capitalist-oriented buildings, unlike all the agrarian stuff, which is going to be more oriented towards the aristocrats. But also, this stuff feeds into the construction loop. This stuff feeds into pop consumption and consumption goods and this type of stuff. The resources feed into industrial goods. This is a big part of it. They are also extremely efficient per level of construction. You see a lot of these are only 400 construction costs. That's still relatively cheap. And they are also going to be very efficient per worker. As far as industry goes, now you notice a lot of these costs are coming up. They're in 600, 800 construction cost buildings. These are generally going to be less worth focusing on. They're going to be better than the agricultural buildings in general. The kind of standouts as being good are going to be the tooling workshop in particular is going to be very, very strong most of the time, especially as you get onto the very last PM for the tooling workshop. But for the most part, if you are going to focus on something, focusing on the resources specifically is going to be extremely strong. I hope you guys enjoyed. Next episode, we will be talking about a budget as well as kind of talking about economies a little bit more in general, and we'll be solving some of the issues we are experiencing here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm thing, and have a good day.